If you're like me, and you're heavily invested in the PSP and Vita online library, you might be wondering, can I still get to these games? And if you're absolutely nutso like me, can I still buy more PSP or Vita titles? The answer is yes, but maybe Sony doesn't really want you to, especially on PSP. In this video, I'll take a look at the various things you have to do in order to enable managing your PSN library, getting money into your PSN wallet to buy games for the PS3, PSP, and Vita, and how to get them downloading. The information in this video is accurate as of the end of July 2025. If there's any changes, I'll note it in the description below. Most online sources, when you look up questions about getting this to work, just suggest you mod your hardware as it's much easier. But if you're a stubborn curmudgeon like me, who just wants to keep using his legit library as long as it's still somewhat technically possible, this video is for you. I paid good money for this stuff. Who cares if it's annoying as hell to get to? It's called the sunk cost fallacy, sweetie. Look it up. Fingernail paint emoji, fingernail paint emoji, fingernail paint emoji. The PSPGo stole my heart in 2009, and I picked up that weird little system as soon as I could in October that year, along with a download card for Gran Turismo PSP and I think Atlus's Persona 1 PSP remake. Over the years, I've probably picked up a couple dozen more downloadable PSP and Vita games. Both the PSPGo and Vita have a lot to recommend them. The PSPGo was truly pocketable, with a footprint a touch smaller than the screen on the PS Vita, and with a fun, clicky action. The PS Vita was an impressive little machine, even if it was over-engineered with both a front and back touch and still missed dual R and L buttons and analog triggers. Of course, the Switch doesn't even have those. The PSP Store interface closed in 2016, with DLC still being purchasable until the final closing of the PSP storefront in July 2021. At that time, Sony also announced the closing of the Vita and PS3 stores, due to server costs and the difficulty of maintaining a secure payment connection with these older systems. But fortunately, the bad player reaction, along with companies needing to scramble to finish their PS Vita projects, caused Sony to reconsider their closure. And things have remained in their semi-sorta open state since. Now for the PlayStation 3 and Vita, yep, you can still buy and download games. You just can't pay for them. But if you own a PlayStation 4 or 5, you can add money to your PSN wallet, which is still reflected in these stores, effectively making purchases possible, just kind of annoying. You don't add funds in the PlayStation Store on PS5, but instead in your account settings subpage, which seems counterintuitive. Go to Settings, User and Accounts, Account, Payment and Subscription, and then finally Add Funds, where you can choose how much Sony bucks you'll pick up. Remember that you do need to head over to the Sony account management site on a computer to make app passwords for your Vita, PS3, and PSP in order to log in, buy games, and manage and download your software. This is in order to keep your two-factor authentication working, which is worth the hassle for account security. Even back when it was new, especially when it was new, really, the PlayStation Store's PSP library was kind of frustrating. Many games either never came to the digital store, Final Fantasy Crisis Core, or the Bonkers Bananas Metal Gear Acid games, for example, or did show up but much later, like Grand Theft Auto Liberty City Stories and Vice City Stories. Vice City Stories was only on the store for a few years before being removed, presumably for music rights reasons. Another annoyance, that I think fortunately was eventually resolved, was that several games for the PSP could not be downloaded directly onto a Vita. But yet, you could work around this with one of the PS3's most interesting features. It could work as extended storage for your PSP and Vita games. So you download it to your PS3 and from there transfer it to your PSP or Vita. I thought this would be a great backup system for when eventually the download service would be taken offline, or a great way to work around the PSP's frustrating lack of WPA2 Wi-Fi support. Unfortunately, support for USB copying of games was broken with a two-factor update to the PlayStation 3 in 2022, and the 5 people that still want to use that feature probably won't be enough to convince Sony to ever fix it. So what about the PSP? It is technically still possible to access your library via the PlayStation Store, but it's fraught. First of all, the PlayStation Store crashes on my PSPGo about 75% of the time. But even getting to it requires me creating a mobile hotspot on my phone with zero security, since my phone only offers WPA2 or more, or no password at all. I don't love having an unsecure hotspot, but at least it's a pretty small coverage radius barely extending beyond the walls of my apartment. but once you're online and the store doesn't crash your device, you will see a mostly broken store interface. Up at the top right is the download icon, and this will offer a full list of your PlayStation Store purchases. And as a bonkers person who seemingly doesn't understand that emulators and modded hardware exist, I still have been dipping into this even up to this last week, where I bought Need for Speed Carbon Own the City after discovering no one had uploaded any footage of the game running on actual hardware. To buy new PSP digital games off of PSN, you'll need 3 things: your PSP, obviously, access to a PS4 or PS5 to add money to the account, and then access to a PS3 or PS Vita in order to actually buy the game. Yeah, that's a lot of devices. From this PS3 store, for example, you can't search PSP games as an overall category, but you can search for games and then purchase the PSP version. For instance, if you were hankering for some Ys, you can go over to the PS3 store and pick up, say, the remake of Ys 3, The Oath of Felghana. Buy it, and then swap over to the PSN store on your PSP via your open mobile hotspot, go to your downloads, and download it. A piece of very tedious cake, like a bundt cake. For PS3 and Vita games, on the other hand, you can just buy those directly from the storefront after adding to your wallet on PS4 or PS5. As a quick aside, you can capture video of your games, or play them on a TV if you've got a PSPGo or PSP 3000 model, both of which offer proprietary component and composite cables. The neat thing is that if you have any PlayStation 1 classics on your PSP, they will run in full screen 4x3 on an old CRT, which makes a weird nerd like me oddly happy. There is a strange edge case scenario that can happen if you, like me, bought a used PSP recently. I picked up a PSPGo for the purpose of outputting my games on it, as some games won't display on a PSTV, and just because I have such a fondness for the hardware itself. I reset the hardware, and then had no end of issues activating the PSPGo as one of my systems, on which I could download games. It seems, and this is only based on personal experience, that the activation servers for PSP, Vita, and PS3 are still functioning, but either the server box is on a forgotten rack somewhere and sometimes goes offline, or crashes when too many people use it. Either way, it does seem to be a hit or miss whether you can activate not just a PSPGo, but also things like PS3. Some guides for troubleshooting issues, like one I read on getting your PSP games to transfer over USB to your PS3, suggest deactivating your consoles and starting over. This is old advice, and I would suggest never doing this, as it may take some time to get them activated again and able to download and play your software. The USB transfer system, as I said before, just isn't working anymore. You need to have your PSP, Vita, or PS3 activated in order to launch your software. It doesn't mean that these will need to always be online, but that the last time you did log in, the activation was good and still works. One last thing before I wrap up this video. I'm complaining a lot about Sony's lack of interest in keeping old consoles easily usable, but in the end, it's still gonna work, it just takes some effort. How does this compare with, say, the Xbox consoles or Nintendo's digital storefronts? Xbox varies by console. The original Xbox didn't really have a storefront, but you could, in some situations, make purchases, like with extra multiplayer maps in Halo 2 via the in-game store. It's all gone now. I cannot access the Halo 2 maps that I bought. Xbox 360 still allows access to your purchases, though as of July 29, 2024, you can no longer buy new games. This does mean, for instance, that all of Rock Band and Dance Central DLC are now gone for good unless you've already bought the stuff you want. As you can see here, my downloads are still available, though you do have to queue them one by one to download, and this can take a while. Also, anything that you own digitally that is backwards compatible on the Xbox One or Series S and X consoles are still available to download, and plenty of backwards compatible 360 and even original Xbox software is still available to use. That's pretty cool. Nintendo storefronts, meanwhile, are a bit of a nightmare. I made the mistake of transferring my virtual console purchases from the Wii to Wii U, which is a bad idea due to how much worse they look via the Wii U's HDMI output. N64 games are super dim, the Wii U doesn't have the old analog native outputs in 240p, and it's just not the same. This was before Nintendo had a unified account system, so your Wii purchases could only be enabled via continuous chain of ownership. If your console broke or got stolen, especially now, you're out of luck for getting access to these old titles via official Nintendo channels. Now, it's very important to keep your hands on your 3DS too, as there's no recourse for accessing your old games if you have a system stolen. Previously, Nintendo would, after some investigation, send you credit for these lost games, but this won't work now as the store for the 3DS is closed. However, on the 3DS, Wii, and Wii U, you can still download old titles that you own, as long as you still have that hardware you have the license on. It wasn't until the Switch that you had account-level purchases that could be downloaded onto multiple machines, although with one tagged as primary. So on the console side, Sony's efforts in some ways are superior to the Xbox's when it comes to the PS3 storefront still being nominally open, but it is lacking the broad backwards compatibility push Xbox has had since the 360. Compared to Steam though, where I have access to Half-Life 2 and everything I've bought on there after 2005, a good 20 years of purchase history, it still comes up a little short. On the plus side though, you still can buy Street Fighter Cross Tekken on PS3, and it's just not available now on Steam. What a tragedy. Thanks for watching this little tutorial / analysis all the way through to the end. If you want to see more about open world drivey shooty crime games, racing game reviews, Switch game reviews, and a look at queer history in video games, check out the rest of my channel and subscribe if you enjoyed it. Oh, and you can like this video too, because seeing new likes gives me an always welcome shot of serotonin. You can also check out my 9 years of podcasting through RPGs and JRPGs on the Square Roots podcast, on all your favorite podcatchers like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Ghana, and whatever you use on your Android. Matthew, Vanessa, Jim, and I play an RPG or sometimes other kinds of games, one chunk at a time. Thanks to El Chunkarina Borzilla for the PingTuber avatars, and today's music was from the Katamari Damacy soundtrack, or maybe Super Highlight if that got copyright struck. Thanks, and I love you. Platonically. Don't make it weird.